Let's party.
Hello, welcome to Party Loaded. It is, of course, your weekly dose of everything great in the world of video games. My name is Luke Retallick. Joining me tonight, we have most of the crew. We're down and Adrian tonight, but we do, of course, have Matt, the Game Dad Diet, and Christian Paulson Brown joining us for all the fun, as usual, tonight.
That's me.
Gents, what's going on? Matt, you okay there?
Yeah, I'm alright. I haven't had a lot of time for gaming. I've been prepping.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Certainly looks like you've got your shit together, at least. Yeah,
that's exactly right. Like toilet rolls are in high demand right now. I'm preparing for the future.
Yeah,
I feel like this is the future that Hideo Kojima predicted in Death Stranding, where we're all just going to be living in bunkers, and like you have to get like sprayed with disinfectant before someone comes into your bunker.
As a millennial with a degree, I'd like to say that I was way ahead of the boomers on like getting toilet roll.
I think it's been hilarious looking at all of the posts at the moment, just sort of saying, "Fucking introverts, rise up!"
We'll be the only ones left. It's perfect.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I've got toilet roll.
Yeah. Look, there's never been a better time to be playing video games, that's for sure, because it's probably going to save all of humanity if people can actually stay out of the outside world for a little while longer, maybe. I don't know. It seems like it could be not a terrible thing at the moment.
It's good people are stocking up on toilet roll because it's really versatile. You can wipe your ass with it. That's about
it. Don't stop, Christian. You're on a roll. I just find it. Go, Matt. Go.
I was going to say I find it really funny that people are stocking up on toilet roll, but like when I was over at Woolies, that was the only thing they were out of. Like canned goods, like they're all still there. That's fine.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. It's like there's other things you need to survive, people.
Yeah, game nerds around the world, please, for the love of fucking God, stock up on some deodorant. That would be awesome. Like, I will never complain about stores selling out of that stuff if it goes to a good home. So, yeah. Funny side story though, like on the whole toilet paper hoarding thing. I actually came to the memory today that for the longest time, I actually had hoarded a single roll of toilet paper for about 15 years. I had it, and it was actually in my bedroom at home as a kid. And the reason why is because it was actually a collector's toilet roll, believe it or not, from Beavis and Butthead. So it was literally the Cornholio like TP for my bunghole toilet paper, and it had like illustrations of all the Beavis and Butthead characters like the whole way down the roll. And I remember there was actually some companies, and I'm sure there was video game companies that did this too, but I think it was just random sort of pop culture shit at the time that had like themed toilet rolls. I wonder how many kids actually ever used those rolls. Yeah, because who would like mess up their collectible like that? It seems counterintuitive. Yeah.
I'm just imagining now, like, it's the end of the world, you've run out of toilet paper, and you're sitting there weeping as you wipe your ass with your collectible.
But you would be weeping too, because these things are usually fucking one-ply. So, you know, you'd be taking a digital trip through Mud Valley if you're not careful, because these things are not thick at all.
Oh no, they use the lead-based ink.
Absolutely. Oh, God. But yeah, man, there's some weird collectibles out there. That was certainly one that stood out in my childhood. But
that has to be an episode. We have to do an episode on weird collectibles.
Weird collectibles, yeah. Really good. I would like to be more stupidly rich that I could actually afford to buy more useless collectibles. But I'm not the fucking toilet paper baron that you are, Matt, so maybe I won't be able to afford them before you can. So I'll have to live vicariously through you. That's how this gets.
I did eBay search Evangelion floppy disk today because I saw that once upon a time there was like an exclusive floppy disk set made with like embossed characters from Evangelion on like the metal slidey part. And I was like, I wonder if you can actually buy those. And no, you can't. So if anybody listening has some Evangelion floppy disks lying around, I'll take them off your hands.
Yeah. Christian wants your floppies.
If the whole thing with Australia and how every time Caramilk gets released, people buy a shit ton of it and then sell it on eBay, I'm pretty sure in a couple of days we're going to start seeing bog roll on eBay. for like thousands of dollars.
It's happened already. Like, it's not on eBay. It's on Facebook buy, sell, and trade groups. Yeah, for sure. It turned up days ago, Matt. I'm shocked that you haven't seen it yet.
I have not actually seen it yet. That's hilarious.
Yeah, just, yeah.
And also really sad.
Oh, yeah. Yet one more reason to stay away from Facebook. But anyway.
At least like, while I'm on my phone, reason number 2. While I'm on my phone and I'm stuck in the toilet with no toilet paper, I can go onto Facebook and request toilet paper from my neighbors.
Yep. I actually, it fills me with joy that at some point, like somewhere in the world, we're going to get a repeat of that famous Seinfeld scene where Elaine's trying to, can you spare a square? Did you ever see that episode?
Yeah.
Awesome times. But we're not here to talk about that shit. We're talking about other shit tonight. We got games to talk about. So, gents, I know you both had a relatively quiet week, so I'll kick off tonight if you like, because I want to talk about something briefly, and then I'll get into the new stuff that I played. So I succeeded in my goal last week, and I finished Control. And I went and platinumed it as well, straight afterwards.
Nice, well done.
Yeah, I did not stop. I basically hit the end of the game and decided I'm not fucking sleeping tonight because this is still rad as fuck. So, I just got through every last bit of content, platinumed it, and was kind of disappointed that there wasn't DLC available already because, gentlemen, I have a new game of 2019 as far as I'm concerned.
Really?
Yeah.
Top 3 or top of the top 3?
Top 1. It is my number 1 of last year now. Yeah.
What was your previous top 1?
Res Evil Remake, I think.
Res Evil Remake? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's pick that out.
Yeah. So, I mean, to be fair, like, in terms of the level of competition last year, it probably wasn't quite as high as other previous years where we talked about party favorites, but retroactively, if I could go back and change it, I would, because, and Christian, I know that you had a different experience with the game, and I think that maybe this comes to our very particular tastes, but, I will actually make a very strong recommendation to Matt in particular. Matt, I think you need to play this game. So
I've played it.
Oh, you have?
I did.
Have you finished it?
I played it and finished it.
Oh, you did?
It was like my number 4 or 5, I think.
Oh, fuck,
year.
of course it was, yeah. So, this is just me getting caught up in the headspace of just wanting to share this so strongly with you.
No, I fucking loved it. I really, really did enjoy it. But, like, I played a whole bunch of indies that just, for me, shone a lot brighter. So,
that's fair, yeah. No, the world building really hit a chime with me.
Oh,
It was my thing to a T, so...
The whole SCP Foundation kind of narrative it tells is really cool.
Yeah. Like, to compare it to something like Resi 2 Remake as well, like, I would put Control higher only because I think that what Resident Evil 2 Remake does, it does virtually perfectly, which is to give you that kind of... and you're kind of comparing it to the original too, so it's got already that high standard that it's just blowing out of the water because it's so much better game to the original, which puts it on a good footing to begin with. And it's a lot about the atmosphere and the visuals in particular. But in terms of the gameplay, like I found Control a much more fun game to play. Generally, because you've got a lot more agency, you're a lot less on rails. The combat, I actually found quite engaging. I know you didn't sort of chime with it as much, Christian. You kind of found it a bit repetitive. And I'll grant that it was a bit repetitive in spots, but I actually didn't mind the repetitive nature of it because I enjoyed it. It was kind of like more of a good thing for me. And the selection of powers that I think that you get in that game are just enough to make you feel quite... godly, but without giving you the spoils of too many choices to make when it comes to how to sort of operate. So, because there's only like, 4 or 5 different gun patterns that you can use, and your sort of... Your abilities, like your psychic type abilities, you don't need to switch between them. Like, you've got them all available at all times. So, it means that you get to play around and use the fun stuff always. Like, you don't have to sort of prioritize one power over another in terms of switching them in and out, which I thought was really cool. So, but yeah, the only thing I think maybe that for my mind would let the game down a little bit is a couple of the boss fights were a bit naff in terms of what you actually needed to do.
A couple of them have like really steep learning curves as well.
Yeah,
like sudden difficulty spikes, a bit unpleasant.
And the save point locations could have been a bit better in a couple of spots, particularly where there's boss fights that you need to travel back to if you die and need to go again. But all the things that stood out to me just like transcended all of that. Like particularly the characters, the cast of characters were all-star cast. Like there's not a single character in that game that I thought was shit. Like there were ones that I preferred, but yeah,
that blows my mind more than the combat and the abilities thing.
Really,
I found the characters completely forgettable.
Wow, I love them. Yeah.
I quite enjoy the characters too. Like, yeah.
You get quite a bit of dialogue with them too. So
the only character that I liked was the guy who was in charge of the prison of all the things.
Oh, the dude with the split lip.
I liked him because I felt like I actually interacted with him quite a lot and he talked a lot. But most of the other characters, maybe like I didn't ever feel like I really needed to talk to them much. Like there's like the secretary girl or whatever who has, I don't know, she's not a secretary, but there's like the blonde girl.
Yeah. The research assistant, Emily Pope, I think her name is. Yeah.
Yeah. But I found nothing about her character interesting or her backstory. And then all like the bosses you fight, I know that they're all like former members of the like Bureau of Control or whatever, and they all have names and stuff. But like, I feel like I can't remember any of their names, or I was never given any reason to like care about them at all. Like it was like, no, you're fighting Bob. I just killed Bob. Who the fuck was Bob?
I think the setup to a lot of the boss fights was better than the boss characters themselves. Like a classic example being the fridge dude. So there's a dude in the game who's literally in charge of like staring at a fridge. Because if he stops looking at it, it will teleport away and cause mischief. So you eventually have to sort of relieve him, and when you do, something happens, you get drawn into a boss fight. So I won't sort of go into too much spoilery detail, but that setup is great.
I've heard that specific thing brought up in like almost every conversation about Control. That's like the go-to quirky moment that I hear about. And I feel like there's not a lot of stuff like that in the game.
Oh, okay. Well, I personally would disagree, but I'd very much think it's a subjective thing. So I can appreciate that. But holy shit, the ashtray maze. That was a standout fist-pumping moment of that game that just like... I was loving it so much to that point, and then that was just like the layer of icing on the cake that I was not ready for. So
that bit's very good.
Yeah. I very much agree with one of the game developers I follow on Twitter. Megan Fox was basically saying like, if all of Control was that moment, was just like that whole sequence, then it would be fucking amazing, and it'd be like it needed more situations like that where the world kind of gets really wonky.
I don't think it needs to be the whole game objects. Though. Like I think the reason why it stood out was because that's not the whole game.
No, not like that. It needs to be the whole game. Like, you know, the whole game is just the ashtray maze, but rather that the game needed more moments like the ashtray maze. You know, rather than like. Here's a weird moment with the rubber duck, right? Where it teleports around and you just kind of follow it. And it's like, it's not really weird. Like, it's just kind of teleporting places. Whereas the ashtray maze was genuinely bizarre, right? And I think that's why the fridge guy gets brought up a lot as well, because that was also really weird, because it kind of catches you off guard. You see him... and then you find out what the deal with the fridge is, and it's way more terrifying, and you understand why he was terrified of it.
So for anyone who's
more moments to kind of emphasize that.
For anyone who's listening, we should probably like give a little bit of context around what the ashtray maze is, because otherwise it's going to sound like gobbledygook. If you're concerned about spoilers for Control, maybe just sort of don't listen for the next minute. But essentially, what the ashtray maze is it's less of a puzzle sort of thing and more of a really engaging action set piece. Where you actually get given a set of headphones and you go into this maze. And the maze is basically like that really freaking cool chase scene in the Doctor Strange movie, where the environment is sort of ever-changing and shifting around you and you have to sort of navigate your way through it. But in this case, it's set in the middle of like an old-style sort of hotel. With like wallpapered sort of rooms and chairs and ashtrays littered everywhere, and you have to sort of jump and levitate and sort of move through walls as they shift and change around you. And it's all done while you're in the middle of an ongoing fight, and all to the power of prog rock. So it's great.
It's fantastic. And like the narrative reasons why you have to wear the headphones to navigate is fucking cool. Like that's the stuff that I really enjoyed. But the stuff that seemed like it leaned a little bit close to like just kind of ripping off an SCP article was less interesting. And there's some really good SCP articles about really bizarre shit that like I would much rather they rip that stuff off. But I am seriously looking for like there's areas in the game that are narratively super exciting. Like I forget what they call the area underneath the facility where it's like just this infinite forest of like pillars that's holding the building up. And that's the location of the upcoming DLC.
That's
which is
what it is.
Really
cool.
fucking cool. Yeah, like that is an area where I want to know more about it. Because you only go in there very briefly for like one brief little cinematic sequence. You never do really anything else there.
Yeah.
So I want to explore more stuff like that because that's the cool stuff in Control that I thoroughly enjoyed. Yeah.
I would be happy to explore any area of the oldest house that they fill out more. I think there's lots of cool stuff they could do with most of those zones. Yeah, which is really sweet. But I mean, bring on the DLC. I'm definitely ready for it. I think and now that do any of you remember when it's due for? Because I feel like it's not that far away.
No, it's not that far away. I don't remember the specific date, but I think it actually might be this month.
Okay, all right, cool. So having everything fresh in the mind will probably be good for that. But Do you think they'll do a sequel? I'm honestly curious.
I think they will. I think they will.
Yeah.
But then, given that studio, like before they do a sequel, they might come back and what's the game they did before with the writer Alan Wake? I think they're going to do an Alan Wake sequel first.
They also did, Quantum Break, yeah.
Quantum Break doesn't deserve a sequel.
No, I think Quantum Break was kind of their first crack at this kind of game, which didn't quite land, and now they've really gotten it. But if they do a sequel to Control, I really hope that they actually include some out in the field stuff. So rather than just being in the bureau building the whole time, like actually explore some stuff in the outside world where like there's objects of power that are causing weird shit to happen and mix up the environment a little bit. I think that'd be cool.
I mean,
that'd be good.
Alan Wake and Control are in the same universe. Like, it would be very cool to kind of like have them have their own like little cinematic universe thing they do. Like that'd be cool.
Yeah, that would be sweet. But so I finished that off, and then the rest of the time I spent this week, I picked up Judgment and played a little bit more of that because I haven't finished that off yet. But then I put that down immediately because, surprise, surprise, something that I've been really excited and waiting for actually launched early, and that is the new expansion for Division 2, the Warlords of New York.
Cool.
Yeah. So it came out like a full 24 hours early, virtually. So I fired that up last night, and I have been playing it. And I think probably the easiest comparison I can make for Warlords of New York for an ongoing game like this is that it's pretty much like to talk Destiny 2 terms, it's the Forsaken expansion of Division 2. Yeah. In a lot of respects, like it sort of changes up the end game considerably. It adds like a new layer of progression where there's like another 10 levels to get, and higher gear score sort of weapons to attain to sort of make everything like another few levels up. But also, most importantly, the narrative aspect that they've added to the game is the whole sort of a team of bosses that are working together that you can hunt in like any order you like it's the Mega Man boss kind of setup, similar to how the Scorn Barons were in Destiny 2.
Rogues Gallery.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you sort of go after them and do that. But the cool thing they've done with it is that unlike the approach that they could have taken, where each individual character is just like a single mission that you go and you fight them, and then you move on to sort of like the end boss, who's kind of like the main character that's pulling all the strings. Instead, there's actually lead up missions to each one that actually kind of set up a bit of narrative to track them down and locate them before you actually get to encounter them. And to me, that reminds me a lot more of like the heist setup missions in something like GTA Online. So you actually have to do a bit of groundwork before you can sort of get to the engagement that you need to have, and that groundwork varies depending on which area of the city that you're in. So that's really interesting, actually. So the one that I did last night, the rogue that you kind of after is like a tech expert who's he's a builder of like more aggressive drone tech, and sort of you find out later that he actually uses like hologram technology to kind of evade capture and that sort of stuff. And you start off hunting for him by actually trying to recover like lost drone footage from things that have crashed around the city. And you sort of follow up a few leads, and you head into like an animal shelter and a prison that have kind of been abandoned, and then you eventually sort of encounter some of the goons linked to him and track him down. But the progression towards it is really, really cool. Division 2 is one of those weird games where it actually definitely does have narrative, and if you've been playing since the beginning of Division 1, you probably know a bit of it. A lot of it's entirely forgettable. Like, it's not the visceral kind of, sci-fi characters of Destiny or like a lot of other different settings. So I think you kind of, there's definitely a level of investment that you kind of have to have before you understand what the heck's going on. But it's there if you look. and the character that you're kind of going after as the big bad of this expansion is actually the big bad that was introduced at the very end of the first game. So he's been going for a while, and the fact that now you're finally sort of getting to go after him is a bit of a big deal in the sort of scheme of Division, because he's been sort of like a puppeteer of a lot of bad shit for quite some time now. So they're finally committing to paying off that character a bit, which is cool. So yeah. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed my time with it last night. I logged in for the first time. I think it's been about 9 months since I played it, and holy shit, I was confused. It was like, man, there's a lot of systems and menus and things that I don't remember, and this has moved, and they've reallocated these points to this thing, and I need to make decisions now. And, oh my god! So yeah.
Yeah, like going back to Destiny 2 was exactly like that as well.
It was. But one thing I will say to Division 2's credit, and this is a really good move on their part, I think, is that there's actually a tooltip style tutorial system that just sits on the side, and it's not too intrusive. It kind of just pops up and helps you by reminding you some of the basics of the game that seems to have been activated by virtue of how long it's been since I logged in. So, yeah. I don't think it's linked to the expansion specifically. I think it detected that it's been a while since I've played, and it something you can immediately toggle on or off if you like. But I left it on, and holy shit, that thing was useful because it reminded me of a bunch of different sort of controls and things that I had forgotten. And then I sort of reached the point where I was comfortable and confident enough that I kind of left it on just for a little bit longer to see if there's anything I'd missed. But then I switched it off, and I was just like, cool. Well, that's just saved me a whole bunch of time. So I really appreciated that. That was great. And there's some good content that I've missed in the year one stuff as well. So in addition to the expansion content, they've actually got a whole bunch of new side missions. They've got the raid, which I haven't done yet either, which is going to require some coordination because you actually do need to find 7 other players to do that, which is tricky. But there's like a thing called what is it? And it's not an exhibition. It's a excursion, I think. Yeah, it's called an excursion, and it's kind of like a mini sort of series of missions that are linked together into kind of like a short narrative arc that you can do outside of the main stuff as well, which is cool. And there's a new stronghold. There's heaps to do. So I'm very much kind of in that, like, having taken time off and come back. Now there's a lot of content, which is great. So good time to be playing Division 2. So I'm enjoying that. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I guess, do you guys want to talk about anything you played during the week? I know it was pretty light on, or...
it was light, but it was light because I've already talked about what I'm doing. I did log on to Destiny briefly to go wrap up some story content, and because last season, well, still this season, but now you're talking about Division 2, and I'm like, man, I'd like to get into Division 2, but that new trailer for Destiny 2 looks great. So, but it was only basically to hop on, do story missions, and get access to the yellow shader because it looks great. And then I logged off, pretty much, was all I did in Destiny.
Yeah.
Pillars of Eternity Deadfire, I said before we started recording, I really need to check how many hours I've put in that thing. It's 98 now.
Oh, wow. My God.
I'm at the point now, like, so there's all these different factions in the game that you get reputation with, and you're basically trying to balance reputation between them. And it kind of has... you know how in Mass Effect, like, you go around the galaxy trying to put together an army to face the Reapers at the end?
Yeah.
It's essentially has a similar system, but unlike with Mass Effect, where, like, you're basically trying to pull everybody together to rally together, with Pillars of Eternity Deadfire, the way it kind of ends is, like, you can choose a faction to come with you, but then choosing them will piss off every other faction.
Oh, so it's an or situation, not an and situation. Yeah. Cool.
Or you can say you're all fucking assholes and do it yourself without any help. And that's the route I'm going down.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but what I'm doing first is, like, all of the different story missions, like, every single faction is reasonable, and then they'll have a point where they become unreasonable, and the expectations, like, you know, you can play a character that's like, I'm going to do everything I can to get these factions working together. And then one of the factions will be like, hey, go assassinate this person from this other faction.
Yeah.
And then you're like, fuck no. And they're like, cool, pleasure doing business with you, dickhead. And they'll just, like, flip you the bird as you walk out the door. Yeah. And that's the point where I'm basically getting to with every single faction. Like, I'm getting to that point where they asked me to do something horrible, and I told them no, and then they hate my guts. Yeah. And so I'm just going to do that with every faction and then go do that shit by myself. And it's kind of interesting you do make decisions on the way that change like how the factions operate, who's in charge of them, and everything like that. So even if I don't work with a faction, I know that by doing the ending by myself, I've put all the factions in a state that I want them to be in, so that when the end credits start rolling and it's talking about what each faction does, they'll at least be in a state that like I consider to be a decent enough state. So that's kind of neat. Yeah.
That's how many factions are there in total, roughly?
Oh god, I'd have to actually go through because there's a lot of them. So kind of off the top of my head, like there's the pirates faction. Every different faction also has like sub factions that you kind of actually have to choose, and that's how you define what they want to be. So like the pirates is interesting because you have like this old guard that supports slavery, but then you have a new guard who are absolutely, overly brutal, but they are massively against slavery. So you're basically kind of choosing between those two things. So like, yeah, you got the they're called the Principi. So they're the pirates. You've got two trading factions. You've got the kind of kingdom faction, but then within all of those as well is like little sub factions for like different areas. You've got the slavers. You can actually like, there's like major factions, but then also minor ones that do change the ending in some way as well.
Okay.
But yeah, it's all the major factions that have their own narrative storylines and such. Yep.
Nice. Pillars.
That's cool.
Yep. It's another one for the list.
It's very good. It's just very long.
Yeah. I think now that we're actually in March and man, video games are happening now. Like stuff is going on. And you know today's the 4th, so you know what that means. That's 16 days, babe.
Yeah.
16 more days.
I am looking forward to that.
Not that anyone's counting, of course, but yeah. All right.
We're talking about Animal Crossing, right?
Sure.
That is the one of the 2 games I have pre-ordered, so I'll be getting both, of course.
So, Christian, if you've committed to Animal Crossing, I'll Animal Cross with you as well.
Cool. Yeah. Sweet. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I will be away for a couple of days on around the 20th, so I'm going to have to wait to play either game, which is going to be a bit painful.
That's good. That's all right. I'm not going to be Animal Crossing with you on launch day. You can get fucked. I got fish to fry in a whole other dimension, man.
Doom will probably be a day one pickup for me, and I'll kind of keep an eye on Animal Crossing.
Yeah. Actually, yes, Matt. We need to invade each other's games. That's what we need to do. Yeah. Seriously, that's going to be part of the fun. I'm really looking forward to that. Yeah.
Yep.
So sweet. Yeah.
The only thing I played was more Yakuza 0. I'm at the point of no return in it now, where the character said, "This is a good point to like do everything else you need to do because after this there's no going back." And this is and they even say like create a save now if you want to come back and like do more things later. So I'm right at that point. Which is, yeah.
You are very much at the end game then, because I remember where that happens. Yeah. It has continued to be strange jumping back into it so far into the game. Like I found that one thing it did is it made me less motivated to do many of the side stories because I was kind of just wanting to like wrap it up, like jumping in again halfway through. I'm like, I just want to finish it and then start Kiwami fresh. Yeah. So that's what I'm going to do. Is I should finish 0 tomorrow and then I'll start Kiwami fresh and then have like a more in-depth playthrough of Kiwami. Yeah. I think the thing that Yakuza 0 suffers from a little bit is the fact that it's 2 point of view characters and it switches between them because it makes the whole game feel longer than perhaps it would otherwise. It
definitely made me want to invest less in either character, because like with Kiryu, he's got the whole like real estate investment thing where you're taking over parts of Kamurocho, but I'm like, I can't really be bothered doing that when pretty soon I'm going to switch to Majima and then I can't continue to like manage that system.
Yeah.
So it's just annoying having to like switch between them.
Do the two. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's when you get to Yakuza Kiwami 1, the game's considerably shorter. And Kiwami 2 is shorter as well. But I think that...
I looked them all up on how long to beat.
Yeah. But I'll say right now, Kiwami's good. Kiwami 2 is the standout of the series in my mind. Like that game.
That's the Dragon Engine Switch I know as well.
And it's just a fucking awesome game. It's really good. So, yeah.
Cool.
So if you work your way up to that, you will not be disappointed. Yeah. Nice. All right. Well, anyway, let's work our way up to some news for this week. So, Matt... a reporter on the ground. What's the state of the games industry and the coronavirus? Dialing in, Matt, what have you got for us?
I'm here live on the ground in San Francisco. Things are shit, which is why I've got all this toilet paper. So GDC, I was talking about it last week, where I was saying that the mayor was apparently putting pressure on the conference to be cancelled.
Yeah.
That a whole bunch of people had been dropping out of it and everything. Somebody pointed out to me that all the big companies that are actually dropping out were also platinum sponsors of GDC. So them dropping out would also be them withdrawing cash support from the event running. And so when I think it was literally the day after we did the podcast recording last week, GDC got cancelled outright. Not cancelled. It's technically postponed.
We'll see though.
Yeah, I think that it won't run this year. So I don't think coronavirus is going anywhere, right? Like, it's going to be around for a while, and they're also dealing with the United States healthcare system. It's only going to get worse there, while it might actually get kind of better here.
There's also the issue of where do you slot an event like that into an already fairly established calendar as well? So
yeah. Exactly. Like, they're talking about winter for us, which is summer for the United States. Which would be interesting. Like, that time of year in San Francisco would be actually probably nicer in terms of like the weather. Not that it's bad when they run it otherwise, but it's not that long away either. Like to do that, like that's a hell of a move.
No, we've got E3 and Gamescom coming up soon. Like,
I think they're going to get cancelled as well. Honestly,
when is Gamescom? Is that August?
Or Gamescom's later in the year, so it might be okay. But E3, I'm fairly certain, like, those big companies that pulled out from GDC are going to be looking at E3, and they're going to be ready to pull the trigger on pulling out of that too.
It's such a weird thing in like the new generation kickoff year to be looking at something like E3 potentially getting cancelled. That's weird.
I don't even know if Generation is going to kick off this year because of the virus.
Could happen.
Like, so much hardware is developed in China, and there was an article that I was reading recently that like. There's satellite photos from over China that kind of show their pollution output, like the CO2 emission output that they've got going at the moment. And it's dropped by like 70 to 80%.
Yeah.
Because their factories just aren't working. Like, nobody is at work. It's that like intense over there right now. And that's the only way we can know that, because like it's not like the Chinese government's going to communicate that sort of thing. But yeah, like it is technically just a cold. Like, for most people, you will get it and then it will go away, and you may not even realize you had it because it's just like a cold.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's end of the world material. I think the big terrifying thing is more for like financial markets, because like we're talking about potentially an entire year of like manufacturing and everything just not happening.
Yeah.
Because people are wiped out of work. And that's bizarre. It's kind of weird to exist in that, because it is kind of an end of the world scenario for a year. Like, everything just stops for a year.
Yeah. The more infectious aspect is the fear and uncertainty, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. It's crazy.
I'm not scared at all. I just have a lot of toilet paper.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, I mean, I've got travel plans for April, which are, there's certain aspects of doubt at the moment, because I was due to be heading through Europe in some of the areas that now in Italy are impacted. And while I'm not particularly worried about getting infected, I'm worried about like a border closing and fucking up my travel.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's funny because I'm teaching. And it just came through the email today from on high that apparently the federal government has said teachers and students are not allowed to travel overseas now.
Wow.
So if we had any sort of overseas travel planned, we were no longer allowed to do it.
Yeah.
UWA did put the same thing out today, saying that you have to, like, it's not like a flat ban. It's like you need to have a good reason to travel.
Yeah. When I return from my trip, there's actually a very good chance that I'm going to have to self-isolate for a couple of weeks before I return to the office, which the nature of my job is such that I can work remotely. It's not an issue, and I can do that pretty comfortably. But it's just a fucking shame that I'm going to get an extra 2 weeks to potentially play games at home after April.
What a pity.
Yeah, what a pity.
I work. I am working today. Totally not playing games right now.
Hey man, I work for a games company. I can justify this shit. Anyway, so can do this. Yeah, no, it's really unfortunate. I really feel badly for a lot of the smaller sort of indie teams and devs that are struggling for the financial impact side of this thing. So because there's been one opportunity.
Yeah, it's their one opportunity to make business contacts and everything. Like the team that I'm working with, like one of our team members actually got government funding to go over to GDC, which thankfully the West Australian government in that respect has been really supportive because they've basically extended out the time that we can use that funding to 2021.
Oh, good. Yeah.
So they've extended it out a full year. But for other companies, like if they paid for like booth space to show off their game that's going to release next month during GDC, then now it's gone and they've just lost an opportunity to show the game off. Like that sort of thing's really, really bad.
Yeah.
Like for a game studio, that's horrendous.
Yeah.
So
I wonder if there's going to be an increase, even if a small one, in digital game sales because people are like staying in more, avoiding going out and like buying games.
I would wager, yeah.
I fully believe there will be. Yeah.
Like, have you seen the fact that so Zoom, the meeting program that a lot of companies use for online meetings, their stocks recently fucking skyrocketed because of coronavirus, because of all the people working from home. And a lot of different programs were experiencing that recently, where their servers went down because they were just suddenly overwhelmed by people working from home. It's apparently like if you're working in Silicon Valley in like California, the current thing is like, don't come to the office. We don't care if you're not sick, work from home right now. And it's really kind of stretching thin like a lot of services that provide that. But it also might kind of lead to like a very sudden culture change that like working from home is just kind of a very accepted thing to do. So, you know, it could have benefits. Like we could be sort of talking next year like, yeah, I worked from home today and it was perfectly fine. It's just kind of expected now. So,
yeah. I did have the idle thought today that it was kind of ironic that, you know, in the midst of all this coronavirus sort of terror that's going around the place, this hysteria, that, you know, we had an early release of the Division 2 expansion that takes you back to where the green poison originally devastated New York. And I'm just like, man, if this isn't on point at the moment, then I don't know what is.
I was watching someone do a Let's Play on Twitch of Resident Evil 6. And in that game, it's mostly set in China. And the virus is called the C virus.
Oh, wow.
There's the one anime that's set in like 2020.
Oh, Akira?
Yeah. And like the Olympics get cancelled because of a virus. And it's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Man,
super weird.
Stuff's rough this year. We knew it was going to be interesting, but not for these reasons. It's
absolutely.
Yeah. It's an odd one.
Like the fact that the Americans have got their voting for the Democratic primaries at the moment. I'm just waiting for somebody to go into one of those places sick. Like that shit can happen. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, let's move on to something of a slightly lighter note. How about ocular infecting sort of demon worms? Does that sound like an upgrade from coronavirus? No.
It's an upgrade in a bad way. It's way worse than the coronavirus.
Yes, it is.
Perspective you're taking.
Yeah. All right. Well, from the perspective of the race in this clip that I'm just going to show now, the Gith Yankee, it's a pretty harrowing experience. So the cinematic in-game sort of cutscene for the new Baldur's Gate 3 went live during the week, and this was sort of in the lead up to the sort of hands-on gameplay that was shown at PAX East, I believe it was. So it is looking like in Baldur's Gate 3 there's going to be a very, very heavy sort of Gith and Illithid Mind Flayer sort of theme. So these two factions sort of warring with each other, you know, in the D&D setting where Baldur's Gate's sort of located. So there's definitely humans and other kind of standard world races involved. It appears playable character-wise there's actually quite a bit of focus on the tieflings this time around too, which is really cool. So they're kind of like... you know, half-breed human demonkin or devilkin. Is it demons or devils? I actually forget. The
devil, I think.
The difference is really weird because we were discussing D&D.
The devils are lawful evil and demons.
The other one's chaotic. Yeah.
That sounds about right. Anyway, we can go and check our facts on that later. But
we can be nerds off air too.
Absolutely. The cool horned devil people. So anyway,
is there an emphasis on tieflings in this?
You can. Well, the couple of the things that I've seen in what they've talked about is that there's going to be classes in the game game now, which is different to how, because this is from Larian Studios, the makers of Divinity and Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2. Classes weren't a thing in those games.
No.
So that's something new for them. And I don't know if the previous Baldur's Gate games actually had a particularly big focus on a wide range of classes. I think it was very limited. They seems like they've opened it up quite a bit.
It was quite wide, and you had like the multi-classing and prestige classing.
Oh, okay. Maybe my memory's just doing me wrong then. Yeah. But I mean, the game's evolved a bit since those times. Like some of the other sort of minor races are played a lot more frequently now, like Tieflings being a good example. So there's probably a bit more sort of lore they can plumb the depths of in terms of recent stuff, which is good. But yeah, like it really seems that they're going the heavy kind of D&D rule mechanic angle. Like you can actually see that. I mean, it's turn-based for a start. Like they've confirmed that it's turn-based now, which I think a lot of people. There's a few with mixed feelings about, but I think there's a lot of people who are actually really happy with that. Like I'm being one.
I'm super happy.
I'm very happy with it.
Yeah.
And it's what Larian have shown that they do exceptionally well, because that's how Divinity Original Sin works as well. So. But that also means that in terms of the way it integrates with the actual D&D rules, now you actually on screen see like a D20 rolling when you take various different actions. And I think you can toggle it off or not, but to actually put that level of visibility in there with how some of the actual game rules interact beneath the surface and see how some of those stats and values are working, I think is actually really cool. So
which is, back to what they did in Baldur's Gate 2. You could see all the dice rolls in Baldur's Gate.
Yeah.
1 and 2. Yeah.
I need to go back and play those games, actually. I can't even remember. So
that was AD&D, and this is based on 5th edition.
Yeah, which is a super, super solid rule set. So, But, like just some of the stuff that it'll enable you to do in this game, like random weird things you can do, which you can do in any game of D&D because it's a very narrative kind of adventure. But the one example that they had at the showing at PAX was that a couple of the devs doing the demo, the studio founder, I'm going to get his name wrong pronunciation-wise, I think it's Sven Vink. He showed one of his characters actually take off their boots because they'd run out of weapons or something like that and throw them at the enemy. And it did just enough. I think it was like 4 hits points worth of damage to take them out. But just like a random improvised weapon sort of thing like that, that was super cool. Like if the game goes to that level of detail,
with that bit of information, we now know that George W. Bush is the final boss of the game.
Why is that?
Why?
Because he had shoes thrown at him at one time.
He did.
Unfortunately, it didn't do exactly 4 points of damage and kill him instantly. But this is a fantasy setting.
But they need to throw more shoes, Luke.
Yeah.
You get a party of 6 people to throw their shoes at him, clearly.
No, they don't throw the shoes at him. You throw his shoes at someone else. You want to remove his soul. That's the whole point. Not that he would have any. Anyway, getting way off track here. D&D's fucking cool. Baldur's Gate looks awesome. Was there anything that stood out with what you saw, guys, with this one?
I really liked that they're introducing turn-based exploration, which they haven't done before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, like the example they gave is using like stealth, whereas in real-time stealth, like if there's an enemy guard's vision cone kind of rotating around as they walk along their path, you kind of have to, in real time, anticipate where the guard is going to look, and then if you're sort of caught out in the open when they turn, then you're kind of screwed. Whereas with the turn-based one, you can move a certain distance, and then the guard has their turn, and then they're going to walk and they're going to change their vision cone in their turn. But it allows you to, with much more precision, stealth around, knowing that you're going to be safe. And while like obviously less realistic, it makes for a more fun and engaging like gameplay experience of having more control over your out of combat actions too.
Yeah.
I think it's really
it's also more like D&D.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like that part is super like D&D. It's not like, I get my players and I say, "Hey, roll me stealth." Okay, you took too long. They saw you.
Yeah.
Like that's not how it works, right? But yeah, I think for me, like I'm excited by like, we know they're using the 5e rule set, but there's also a ton of additional 5e content now from the new books and everything that they're adding. So it'd be really cool to see like what they do with expansion packs and that sort of thing. So they've got a ton of potential there for that shit, right?
Yeah. Have they mentioned if there's any like design tools like D&D DM style like they put in?
I think they would be like missing out if they didn't.
Oh God, I hope so.
Like, do that. Yeah.
Like Neverwinter had.
Yeah, because it's using the D&D rules, it's massively accessible to actually make custom campaigns there. Like if you understand D&D, if you've DM'd D&D, and you're also like into making games and such, then like it's just makes sense.
Yeah.
So
yeah, 100%.
Very exciting.
Yep, bring it on. Yep.
Last thing I'll mention is I like that Larian seems to be continuing the system they used in original Sin, where for your playable character, you can either choose a pre-made character that will have additional dialogue and a unique backstory that will tie into the game, or you can create your own custom character. So you have the freedom to create any character you want, but then you won't have like your own custom backstory that's actually worked into the game. Or you can go with one of the pre-made characters. I like being able to choose.
Yeah, that's super cool. Nice. Yeah. All right. Christian, on to our last one tonight. What do you got for us?
Yeah, so this is something that I'm by no means an expert on, and it's Riot Games' new competitive shooter, Valorant. There's been a bunch of new info coming out about the game. It's not actually due out until like later in the year, but there's been more videos and screenshots, and they've explained some of the game modes. It's sounding to me quite a bit like Counter-Strike. There's like defuse the bomb missions.
Yeah.
And there's like an in-game shop where like round by round you spend your accrued currency on like upgrades, like you do at the start of a Counter-Strike round. And I don't know, like people can take a look at the screenshots and stuff themselves, but to me, I think visually the game looks pretty ugly to start with. I don't really like the visual design of the game. I don't like the kind of mix of military weapons with like fantasy magic. I think it's like a bit of a jarring contrast.
It's kind of weird because I've been hearing similar feedback lately about the way that Siege has gone as well. So Rainbow Six Siege has gone very sci-fi at the moment. Like the last couple of expansions to it have gone like super sort of fantasy tech direction. So yeah.
I think. Sorry.
No, go on. I
was going to say it's good, but predictable that it will be free to play. What's surprising is that Riot have said that they're not planning on doing character skins. So they're doing weapon skins and sprays, but they're not planning on doing character skins because they say the characters are all designed to have the same hitbox and be instantly recognizable from across the map. This means that when you start changing things like clothing or their color schemes, it could completely change how easy it is to identify certain characters, which is like. That's, of course, the same goes for any shooter, but lots of other shooters like Overwatch seem to have done it perfectly fine.
There have been issues with Overwatch in the past with that kind of thing, though. Like, I do remember that there was a Reinhardt skin in particular that he had like a glowing helmet, and that was a much easier sort of targetable location on the character as a result of that because it's really stuck out and people were taking advantage of it, and there was a little bit of controversy about that. But it hasn't changed any of their hitboxes, I don't think. So
I would be very surprised if they stuck with that, because the other game that comes to mind that had exactly that design for me was Team Fortress 2.
Yeah. And then they did the whole hat thing, right?
They had like in their design documentation when they first started out, like these are the silhouettes of these characters. Like we do not change these silhouettes. And then it was like, now we're going to put hats on them. And they just gave up on that whole design philosophy very, very quickly. I would be very surprised if they stuck with that as well.
I mean, right, like money.
Destiny does the same. Like Destiny, originally in Destiny 1, like whenever you got your really awesome exotic armor, you never really used to be able to do much with it. But now we have skins for it. You can put your shaders on it and everything like that. It's fully customizable because players learn to identify things when they're like similarly shaped to what they kind of expected in the first place. So I don't think they'll stick with that.
This is again more like Counter-Strike. Counter-Strike have weapon skins, and like that's the huge thing is weapon skins, but not really character skins. So if they are like sort of echoing that Counter-Strike vibe, then I guess there is a model out there that has shown that it works with just weepon skins.
I always find weapon skins just so missable though. Like you don't even notice them half the time. Yeah,
it's more for you than everybody else.
Totally.
Yeah, because it's first person.
But I did see that. I would fully suspect that you're right, Christian, that they're going for like the Counter-Strike audience, not like the Overwatch audience, because the fact that like the thing that I heard was they had been bringing in a whole bunch of Counter-Strike players to try it, and Counter-Strike players were saying that it is the best first-person shooter they've played since Counter-Strike. So
Cool.
I think they could potentially pull in some of the Overwatch audience because it's a bit of that perfect storm timing-wise at the moment where, like, Overwatch is definitely in a bit of a lull currently in sort of like the lead up to whatever Overwatch 2 ends up, looking like. So I don't think it's a bad time to kind of pick up people who might have had their fill of that in the meantime. So
I just don't think I can see people from Overwatch going and playing it, but I don't see them like targeting Overwatch's audience. Otherwise, they're really kind of emphasizing your ability to customize characters because that's such a huge thing for Overwatch.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
Yeah.
Nice. All right, well, wait and see what happens with that one. I think that, release date's a while off yet, so, yeah.
Still a lot more to hear about, but I'm hanging out more to hear about Riot Games' fighting game that they've got in the works. So I'll be more excited when more drops about that.
Yeah. Well, they've got heaps on at the moment. It's actually quite amazing how much they've exploded with in terms of development of new content. So we'll see. Lots of money in that studio, and now that they've dealt with all of their other sort of in-house harassment legal issues, maybe they've got a bit more space for it. Well, yeah,
brave new world.
Exactly. Who can say? Anyway, so let's jump into tonight's main topic. So it's kind of one that I've actually been interested in chatting about for a while because I think it's below the surface been something that we've talked about in spits and spurts like over time when really good examples of this have come up, but never as a dedicated topic. So tonight we're actually going to chat about puzzles in games, and that's not to just say that we're going to just talk about puzzle games. We're going to talk about some of the coolest and most notable puzzle type mechanics or encounters in other video games too, because having a game that's completely dedicated to puzzles isn't always the way this shakes out. Like, I think puzzles exist in a lot of games. I would say maybe even most, to a certain extent. But there's definitely some that stand out. Yeah, well, that's true. That's true. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we can maybe even kick off with that. So, Christian, how would you design? How would you define puzzle?
See, I was thinking about this today, and I'm really not sure, right? Because take, for example, Super Mario Odyssey, where you can see one of the moons in an inaccessible location, and you need to figure out how to get to it. Is that solving a puzzle? So, like
navigation challenges, essentially.
Yeah, you need to see how can I jump up here, or is there a hidden switch somewhere?
Yeah.
What do I need to do to get that moon? That
opens up a huge range of any game ever that has a hidden item on a map. Which
basically. Yeah. I'm trying to think what's the difference between problem solving and puzzle solving? Because that's clearly problem solving.
Yeah.
Is it a puzzle?
Yeah.
So the thing that sucks about this conversation is that I have slides that I teach that actually talk about the definition of puzzles, and I don't want to quote them. I really don't. But like
the dictionary defines puzzle.
Do you not want to quote them, Matt? What the fuck good are you?
The simplest definition for a puzzle is a puzzle has a solution.
Okay, right? So this does have a solution. Then Mario Odyssey has a solution.
No, single solution.
Single solution.
Yeah.
So by that extension, are the shrines in Breath of the Wild not puzzles? If you can solve them multiple ways?
If there's multiple ways to solve them, they're more of a challenge.
Or the portal thingamadigs?
Portal, like this is where you start getting to blurry territory, right? Because Portal's absolutely a puzzle game.
Yeah, you have an optimal solution versus
there's an optimal solution, and then there's the solution the developers intended.
Okay.
And then there's the solution that people actually do.
Yeah, you get all this emergent gaming bullshit that can make the waters really muddy in that kind of case. Yeah.
And a lot of the time as well, like quite often you can kind of stumble into a solution by like a lengthier pathway than is what is intended. But typically they do have like a solution, like emphasis on the A. There is a way to solve them. So like an end state that the puzzle needs to end up in order for it to be solved, right?
Okay. So let's take, for example, one of the Breath of the Wild shrines, which is a notorious one, where you use the motion controls to tilt a maze.
I knew you were going to mention that one.
With a ball in it. And the intention seems to be that you tilt and navigate it so that it works its way out of the maze. But what you can do is you can flip the maze, and the ball will shoot up and then land back on the flat bottom of the maze, and then you can just easily tip it off.
Yeah.
Now, that has an intended solution, but also that workaround.
Yeah.
Does that disqualify it from being a puzzle?
Nah, it's a puzzle. The devs fucked up and didn't anticipate what the players were going to do.
Like it's a use of the game mechanics, right? Like it's an unintended use of the game mechanics, but it's absolutely a use of the game mechanics. So like so Portal actually had the level builder they released. They did like a whole little DLC thing.
Yeah.
And so if you ever jumped in there and you actually made like a Portal puzzle in there,
not to mention that the multiplayer Portal's a bit different to the main story Portal in terms of the content as well. Like there's a lot of puzzle focus on that relates to two people working together as opposed to just one person as well. So yeah.
But you could go and hop into Portal and then start making a map and be like, this is my intended route, and guaranteed some smartass will find some way to break it. And if you go and make a puzzle that has multiple ways to fix to solve that puzzle, that still is a puzzle. It's just that there's multiple different solutions, right? But it kind of arises out of like literal jigsaw puzzles, right? The solution is like how you get there isn't what defines it; it's what the end result looks like. That's my kind of opinion. And I'm pretty sure there's documentation that backs that sort of thing up. I hope so, because that's why I tell students.
What about boss fights where you need to exploit certain weaknesses, or like there's a boss spot that you need to hit, and it's like, you know, you need to use one particular ability to knock off its armor so that you can get to that boss spot.
Yeah. Combat puzzle. I 100% think that's a puzzle. That's
a puzzle?
Yeah.
I don't.
Really?
Because like there has to be a line between puzzle and just like problem solving, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Like if a boss is like, if you go and fight a boss and the only way to beat it is by using a single type of your bunch of attacks, that is a puzzle, but it's a really shit boss fight, right? Like, a good example being like in Halo 3, there's a boss that you fight where there's no real, like there's a challenge to it, but there's not really any sort of puzzle to it. You just have like, here's your Spartan laser, hit the boss a bunch of times, right? Like that's not a puzzle. It's just the way that you have to do it.
I suspect I know what game Christian was thinking about when he brought that up. So can I take a punt and say that maybe we're talking about something like Shadow of the Colossus?
I actually was thinking about like a Link Between Worlds.
Okay.
Where you like need to use the paint, like the wall, shifting.
Oh, okay, yeah.
System.
Yeah. Like
the guy with the shield, and you need to like go into his shield, and then he like looks around, and then you can hit him.
Yeah.
And that's like, your. Is it like here's a puzzle? How do you defeat this boss?
Yeah. I think Shadow's a bit different as well, because when you encounter each of the colossi, even though you kind of do treat them and look at them a bit like boss fights, in reality what they are is they're kind of like navigation puzzles where you're under a huge amount of pressure because your target is moving, but you're not really fighting the entity. It's like a navigation puzzle where you're trying to work out the best way to sort of ascend and get around to the weak spot on the creature so you can strike it. But I think that's different to like a straight up fight. It's kind of it's a lot more of a puzzle in the way it approaches you, having to sort of through trial and error try and find out different ways to kind of get up on the damn things and use your environment to actually work out how to actually get to the place that you need to get to. And they're all like that. Like, sure, they have a hit bar and a certain amount of health, but that's more of a measure of the incremental stages of you solving the puzzle as opposed to like a skill-based fight, in my mind. Would you guys agree? Yeah.
I have a real hard time with with the definitions here. Like, I do not know where I sit. Like, it's tough.
It's murky. Yeah.
There's a very, very blurry line there. But I would say, like, the way I kind of imagine a puzzle, it's like if you have multiple tools to solve that thing, it's probably no longer a puzzle unless there's like specific ways you have to use those tools to solve it. Right?
Oh, I have perhaps a good example there of the distinction, and that's to use Hearthstone, right? Because in Hearthstone, it's a card game. You've got multiple cards at your disposal to solve problems like addressing enemy minions, or maximizing your board, or defeating the enemy. But then there's an optional mode, which is Dr. Boom's Puzzle Lab.
Yeah.
And in that mode, there's specific, usually one solution, and you have a defined set of cards that you need to use. And there is one way to solve that puzzle, and you need to figure it out. So that's kind of like that's like a puzzle mode, but then just playing a game of Hearthstone where you've got lots of things at your disposal and you are trying to solve a problem optimally, but it's not really a puzzle.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So like those puzzle modes have a solution, right?
Yeah.
Whereas when you're fighting another player, there's a whole bunch of solutions. And the same goes for boss fights, right? Which is why I say any boss fight where you can only use one of your arsenal of attacks to kill it, that's a shitty boss fight, because really, when you're approaching that boss fight, you should be using everything you've learned to defeat that boss. Where if it's basically like you can only use power attacks to defeat this boss, that sucks. Like there's nothing stopping you in like Mega Man fights, right? Certain bosses are weak to certain enemy type, weapon types rather.
Yeah.
If you go into that and imagine if this boss was based like, your standard gun does no damage. You have to use that weapon type, right? Or figure out what weapon type you have to use in order to actually beat that boss. That's a puzzle, but it's a shit boss, right? So you need to there's kind of that difference between this is a challenge and there's a better way to defeat the boss because one of your tools is stronger than the others against it, versus a puzzle where it's like only one thing's going to solve this.
Okay.
So
here's an interesting sort of extra layer of wrinkle to put on this, which I think is worth discussing. I believe that even though, let's say I agree with your definition, Matt, which I'm actually not certain I 100% do, but let's say for the sake of argument I do. So if we're going to strictly define puzzles as things that have like one set solution, there's not a lot of sort of skill element involved. It's mostly sort of, working out that solution as opposed to, your hand-eye coordination or your ability to fight a boss or something like that. I think that there's a lot to be said for games that actually contain challenges that have a very puzzle theme to them to make them seem like they're really focused around this being a puzzle, even if the reality is there's other mechanics at play that make it not strictly the same thing. And one example I can think of that springs to mind immediately is the Riddler challenges in the Arkham games. So I think that there's a number of the Riddler challenges that actually cause you to use different pieces of your kit or your arsenal that are kind of skill-based. Like some of them actually incorporate sort of light combat elements or, accuracy with throwing your batarang and stuff like that. But they're very much, because it's the freaking Riddler, it's very much themed around it being a puzzle. So, that's kind of the overlay, it's the skin, it's the theme, it's the narrative that they create around that thing. So I would still very much, playing those games, sort of consider those things to be puzzle encounters, even though, if you're going to go by the strict definition, it's probably a bit murkier than that. So,
yes.
Yeah.
So part of the reason I say this, right, with the whole a puzzle has a solution thing, so Half-Life 2, all the physics puzzles in that game are 100% puzzles. But there's also multiple solutions to them because it's physics, right?
Yeah.
Right. So there's
that's like
there's
Portal.
the way exactly, it's like Portal. Like there's multiple ways that you can deal with those problems. Like the end of the day, like the solution may be like get player from point A to point B, and there's a specific pathway through there that they're going to take. If the player finds some way to subvert that path, then that's basically a player. Like Portal is still a puzzle game, despite the fact that you can clip out of walls and just go straight to the finish line, right? Like that doesn't make it no longer a puzzle game. It's not a challenge because of the fact that you have to find the way to jump through walls. The intended route through has a
broken puzzle game in a way.
Like and like puzzles can still be challenging, but the challenge is different. Rather than being like you having to fight against a boss that's constantly beating your head down while you're trying to solve it, like that's where it gets blurry, right? Like if you had a wiffle bat and were beating me over the head while I was trying to solve some of those puzzles that I was showing a couple of weeks ago, like is that a puzzle or a challenge? Like like. It's weird when things get blurry with game mechanics, because the moment game mechanics get involved, the lines blur. So
sorry,
because on that
just making some notes. Hit Matt with
Matt,
Cool. Yep.
under your definition, is Tetris not a puzzle game?
Oh,
Because there's no solution.
that's a good one.
That's a good question. So I don't remember where it is that I heard it from that puzzles have a solution, but like in Tetris you have parts that you're given. Because like Tetris is absolutely a puzzle game, but it's also a game, and games make this shit hard.
Yeah.
Because sure, you have parts that you're given, but like most games have like the options that you're given to solve things, right? Like whether it's guns or abilities or blocks.
Yeah, there's multiple ways to fit those pieces together. Like when we start blurring these lines, like what I should be saying is, while I say like I believe a puzzle has a solution, like I also totally acknowledge that the line is really fucking blurry, because I totally see like Tetris is literally jigsaw pieces. You are fitting together jigsaw pieces, but there's no picture that you're trying to create except to wipe out lines, right? So there is like the objective of wipe out a line, but then games also have objectives as well, where it's like you have this boss that you're meant to defeat, you know,
kill all the enemies. That's like, an objective.
That basically means that every single game is a puzzle game. But that's why I feel like you need to kind of narrow down what it is that makes it a puzzle, right? Because we wouldn't say Doom is a puzzle game.
Doom Eternal, I would say, is much more of a puzzle game, because the way they built the combat system in that is literally a combat puzzle. So, anyway, but yeah, it's subjective. Like I think we have to agree. There's definitely some grey, and it kind of, you know, it's a case by case thing. So,
I was going to make a point. Like, whenever I play an RPG, getting the best possible outcome for me is a puzzle, right? Because like I want to go play through in a certain way to be like, I want to see these characters succeed. I want to see these factions do really well. I want to see this specific outcome, but how do I get to that using the tools that I have at my disposal? I know what the final image is going to look like, but getting there is kind of the interesting things. There's all these moving parts to try and create that image I want, right? Whereas games can have multiple outcomes. Like I can kind of get to that point and fail to actually achieve that image that I have in my head, or maybe that image is just not possible at all. Whereas like strict physical puzzles, like, you know, the ones that I showed off, they have maybe one or two solutions, and those solutions only really change with like rotation on the actual physical board, right?
Yeah.
But the actual pieces don't change, and the way that they fit together doesn't change. But games aren't that strict, because if that was the only way that you could play a game to solve a puzzle in a game, that'd suck. It'd be boring as hell. Yeah. So kind of being creative with it, I think, is just a staple of how puzzle games, even like Barber Is You, there's multiple ways to solve each puzzle in Barber Is You.
But that is 100% a puzzle game. Yeah.
It is 100% a puzzle game. And a lot of those paths are not ones that the developer intended, but they exist. So, yeah.
So I'm actually curious, Matt, because you know you are designing a game at the moment with a team of people, and Recaptive is you know at its core what I would consider to be a puzzle game, from what I understand.
It's 100% a puzzle game.
Yep.
Yeah.
So when you've been building that, have you kind of been sort of adhering to that tight standard of trying to make sure that there's only like a single solution to each sort of block of that game? That has been part of your design scope. So yeah,
there's specific puzzles where we're talking about it being a little bit more open to interpretation. But like, if we give you a rule, right? So puzzles have rules. There's a puzzle that we adore, and I always point out as a reference because we did it in the Global Game Jam, where you learn a rule by going to a website, and that every second cinnamon roll is a dog, right? Nothing about that rule can change. Whenever you get images of cinnamon rolls and the game tells you pick every dog, you have to pick every second cinnamon roll. That rule is unchangeable, right? So it has a single solution. But then there's puzzles later on where every second cinnamon rolls a dog is a rule, you know, that comes up. But then the prompt changes every couple of seconds. And so the outcome, like the potential puzzle solution, changes every couple of seconds as well. And so you have to select everything in advance or enter your solution, wait for the prompt you want, and then hit submit. And so there's potentially multiple different ways to solve that puzzle. But it's still a puzzle game. And it's very easy to define with the rule that I was talking about, because it's based like there is only one single for all of that. But yeah, like most games won't kind of fall into that category. Like you make a boss fight, there's multiple ways to fight that boss because you give the player a tool set to work with.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, it's a sliding scale. I mean, some like boss fights being the good example. There's definitely some boss fights that are a lot more of a puzzle than others.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's not an absolute thing. Like there can absolutely be boss fights that have puzzle mechanics, but it is on a sliding scale, right?
Yeah.
And so like the game that I'm working on is absolutely right down the end. It's a puzzle game, and it's kind of an exploratory puzzle game. And then on the other end, you have games that I don't think there's any single game out there that I can think of that doesn't use puzzle mechanics in some way.
Yeah.
Like they just don't really exist because puzzles were kind of like almost one of the first games that we made because they had rules. They're very, very straightforward rules.
Yeah.
So
one of the earliest games that I can actually recall sort of really appreciating like the puzzle aspect of was actually the Secret of Monkey Island. Because that insult sword fighting sort of mechanic, that was very much a puzzle. Like, and I thought that was a really cool, inventive, unique puzzle. But it always felt like a puzzle. Like it wasn't, it's called sword fighting combat, but it's definitely a puzzle, not a combat in my mind. So I
would agree with that. That's a puzzle.
And, that actually kind of adheres to your thoughts around like a single solution for each one as well. So, which is cool. But,
I'm going to have to actually do a search now to figure out where that came from because I'm pretty sure it's actually an academic article that talks about puzzles actually having individual solutions. But academics also like being very stringent, and games don't like following their rules.
Yeah,
so.
And there's every possibility that games coming out in the future will seek to break that in many different ways.
Oh, hell yeah.
So,
It's not just Tetris. Like all like match 4 games don't have one solution. It's how sort of how good are you at this task repeatedly.
But if I was a hardcore academic, I'd be like, the solution is like the getting those lines destroyed, right? And so like there's multiple ways to do that, but the solution is still to destroy those lines because otherwise you fail at the puzzle, right? But again, like that's a really fucking blurry line, and that you have slid the slider down somewhat. It's not that stringent anymore.
It's funny, like to take a game that we're extremely familiar with. I would sort of say a game like Destiny 2 is not a puzzle game, but all of a sudden when you start talking about things like raids, you absolutely have massive fucking puzzle things in those encounters. So, actually a really, really good example would be Last Wish, because that literally has a puzzle wall at one part, but because that actually there's one encounter in particular in that raid that isn't actually a boss fight like most encounters are in raids. Like that one is like a vault where you actually have to puzzle out how to open up the vault while you're trying to stay alive, essentially. But it's all about sort of shooting symbols and doing things in the correct order and that kind of thing. But then every actual sort of boss encounter in a lot of those raids is got certain puzzle aspects to it as well, where you can never really just straight up fight something. You always have to like jump through a whole bunch of different hoops that don't seem necessarily related to the combat first to allow you to even sort of get a damage phase in. So
but some of those like seem like sort of skill tests.
Some of them definitely are.
Like I haven't played much Destiny 2, but I recall there's one part in the first raid where some people get teleported to like a place where there's like things shooting at them, and then you need to like shoot the things, and there's like some gravity thing that sucks you in. And it's like,
I think to your point, what the difference is that the first time you go through and do it, if you haven't looked at a guide or something like that, it's very much a puzzle. But once you know the process and it's just a case of sort of perfecting it, then that's very much the skill test. So,
but that's like the first time I come across a boss in Dark Souls, I've got no idea how to fight it. I don't know, but is it a puzzle that I don't know how to fight it, and then I need to figure out, what its attacks are, what its weaknesses are, that sort of thing? Is that a puzzle?
Well, the way you encounter it changes because you go through that exploratory problem-solving thing, and then it's just about refining the process once you actually know what to do. So I think that they're actually two different stages.
Is that the same as the Destiny stuff, though?
Possibly. I think the difference with Destiny raids, though, is that very few people actually go in not knowing what to do. So, because it's a fairly big commitment in time and effort that, unless the raid has literally just gone live and nobody knows anything about it, like people will generally watch a video guide so that they're respecting other people's time when they actually go in and do that activity. So, yeah.
Speaking of Destiny, though, we call them jumping puzzles, but are they puzzles?
Yeah.
Fuck
I was
no.
like,
First time, it's the same thing. The first time, if you don't know where to jump, then maybe the puzzle element is in working that out. But once you know what you're doing and you just have to nail it, then
it's a skill check.
It's a skill check. Yeah,
it slides over to the other side. Yeah, because
so there's no such thing as jumping puzzles then?
we call them jumping puzzles, but I wouldn't call them jumping. They're a jumping puzzle when you start, and this is where I'd say like Dark Souls, figuring out a boss is absolutely a puzzle. There was a boss that I fought in Deadfire recently that was incredibly hard, and then I was trying to figure out why, and I realized they were buffing themselves with this one thing, and the way to beat them was actually really easy. If I debuffed them so they lost that thing, suddenly they were a piece of shit. And so the puzzle was kind of figuring out that was what I had to do. Jumping puzzles are kind of the same, where it's like, what do I need to do to solve the puzzle? And the same goes for those puzzles that I have. Like any jigsaw puzzle, once you know like those small but complex jigsaw puzzles, taking them apart and putting them back together is more a challenge than a puzzle, because you already know the solution.
But they remain a puzzle though, because
they remain a puzzle though. Yeah, because games have the sliding scale of like they start falling more onto challenge. Whereas like if I go and do a raid for the first time and I'm doing it blind and I don't know where to go, but I see these lit pathways and I have to kind of jump from pillar to pillar, and then one of them falls out from underneath me because it was a different color, that's a puzzle. So why is it dropping out from beneath me because it's lit a different color? And kind of working that out is a puzzle mechanic, but games are still more about challenge than puzzles.
Yeah.
And like I think that like this is where we get into like the once you solve my game, it won't be challenging at all. There won't be any challenge to it because it's all the way over the side on the puzzle side.
Yeah, so if you choose to go back in and do it again, it'd almost be like the challenge remains as like a time trial almost to try and rip through it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's tricky. I think it very much is a sliding scale. Yeah, that's a great example actually. Yeah.
Out of Worlds, I fucking keep forgetting. Yeah. Out of Worlds is the same. Yeah. Working out the way to get to the end point of the game is a puzzle. But once you know that end point, you've solved it. It's a solved puzzle now, and you can kind of just go back and play it and finish it in 20 minutes easy. So
100%. No, I just thinking a bit more about the jumping puzzle question. I can't name any game, but I wonder if there is a game that I can't think of right now that actually has like an adaptive jumping puzzle where the jumping puzzle actually changes almost like roguelike each time you attempt it, so that you can't memorize the solution and just use it as a skill test. You actually have to try and work it out fresh each time. I wonder if there's something like that out there. I'm not actually sure if there is.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah. Like a procedural jumping puzzle almost.
There's a game called The Floor is Lava, where it is literally just like jumping puzzles. That's all it is. But I don't think they have a procedural generation mode
for that. Yeah, be hard to.
It wouldn't be impossible to do.
Yeah,
it'd be hard to get right, but it would also be fairly boring if all you were doing was jumping. It'd be for those weirdos that like jumping puzzles.
Yeah. Those parkour weirdos that we know out there. Yeah. No, who knows?
Yeah. Like you say parkour weirdos, but then it just occurs to me, Mirror's Edge in a lot of ways, like finding the quickest route to a location to beat the time trial is kind of a puzzle.
Oh, Mirror's Edge is a game all about a parkour weirdo. So yeah, absolutely. So getting a little bit away from the definition discussion, which I think we've kind of got some good definitions that we can use, but we also realize there's a lot of grey there as well. That it's
a lot of grey,
sliding scales of different types.
It's 90% grey.
Yeah. So I want to ask the question: do you guys have a favorite puzzle game, or like a favorite couple that you would sort of consider to be your go-to if you sort of had someone ask you what puzzle game is the best one you ever played, sort of thing? So
puzzle game, not puzzle in a game, but puzzle game.
We'll get to that next, but I want to start with just like a game that you would consider to be at its core a puzzle video game.
Tetris.
Tetris is yours? Yeah.
Tetris is like all time. It's for sure.
Yeah.
I think I'd have to go with Portal.
Okay.
Like I think Portal's a really, really cool one. The way that they actually designed it in such a way to communicate puzzle concepts to players in a non-verbal way is really cool. And I think it made puzzle games actually kind of cool in it, like having that narrative that you kind of went through and everything. Solving puzzles was really neat. So yeah,
Portal was awesome. Actually, I must admit, like some of the funnest times I've ever had playing Portal was actually playing with Jam. doing the co-op stuff. Holy shit, that was hilarious. So it was mostly the antagonistic sort of nature of our team problem solving that just
Luke, you being antagonistic in a cooperative game.
Hey, I was only half of the fucking problem. I was a good half of the problem, but yeah, I was only half of the problem. Look, if I had a go-to when it comes to like my favorite puzzle game ever, I would absolutely go to The Witness every time. So
Witness is very good.
Yeah,
I've got notes about The Witness that I wanted to talk about.
Ooh. Jump in, go for it. What are your notes? What do you think?
Basically, just that maybe I'm too dumb for The Witness.
Yep,
Because
you are.
I tried to. I
don't mean that as a diss. I mean that everybody is too dumb for The Witness. Yeah.
Okay. Well, then what? Because the way I felt about The Witness was I enjoyed it. I found some puzzles to solve, and I solved them, and I felt clever. I felt clever doing it. But then I didn't get stumped by puzzles, but I couldn't figure out what to do next. I didn't know where the puzzles were, and when I did find some puzzles, through some Googling and trying to figure out what the fuck is going on, I was finding puzzles that really you need prerequisite knowledge from other puzzles in order to figure out how to solve them. And I got frustrated with a sense of unease and feeling like I'm not in the right place and the game isn't doing a good job of showing me where I should be. And I get that if I just stuck with it more and done more trial and error, I probably could have figured that out. But I found it frustrating. I think with puzzle games, I prefer a more straightforward approach of the game serving you increasingly difficult puzzles that build on each other. Whereas The Witness, you're exploring this island. And I found myself stumped, basically. Not by the puzzles, but by finding the puzzles.
I think that's a fair observation. Yeah.
Maybe finding the next puzzle is part of the puzzle.
That was what I was going to say. Yeah.
It's to do with like you have to look at the environment in different ways.
The Witness is no joke the most layers of meta fucking puzzle game I've ever encountered, because there are so many layers deep of that game where it just challenges you on every level. Like finding the correct sequence to do things in is one of the puzzles. And honestly, one of the worst things I think you can do in The Witness is accidentally solve a puzzle, because if you accidentally solve something and you don't learn how you did it, that doesn't set you up for the next thing potentially that you'll encounter. You've just cost yourself an important lesson that actually will make things harder. So
The Witness is a weird one, because I actually kind of agree with you, Christian, that like it feels too non-linear, and knowing where to go next is very hard. Like the game doesn't communicate that particularly well. Whereas if it focused more on the exploratory side of things, it's why I like the Outer Wilds, because like you can go and run into something and then realize that what you've just found is the solution to a puzzle, and then go seek out the puzzle. Whereas with The Witness, you stumble on a puzzle and then you go, what the fuck's the solution?
Yeah. It's not completely linear though. Like it's kind of themes. Like if you kind of learn a puzzle theme, that helps you when it comes to other areas with that theme later, but it's not like you have to do area A before area B before area C. Like you can definitely do things in a different order. It's, sometimes actually it's very much like Mega Man in that way, with the sequence of your weapons and the boss fights. Like there are different weapons that are more powerful against different bosses, but it's not a complete rock paper scissors scenario for all of them. So you can do them in a slightly variable order.
You're not wrong. There's certain areas like will suddenly inject in more complex puzzles from other areas, and if you didn't do those other areas first, the area you're currently in is unsolvable until you learn that other area. But the game doesn't do a particularly good job of communicating to you where to kind of go and start seeking out the other solution, and so you can kind of get lost and think, am I just stupid? But it's because like they've just suddenly started mixing puzzles together and didn't really communicate what they were about to do that.
Even if they were like cryptic little hints about like sort of where to go next, like poetic things, like the rain falls through the trees or whatever, and you need to like go somewhere where there's like there's water, there's a waterfall here going through a canopy or something, like something to sort of just nudge me in the right direction so that I know like where I should be going.
There's a few, but they're super not obvious.
Right.
They do so much theming for their areas that like if the moment they started mixing puzzles together, they had an object from another area kind of sitting there in that space, that'd be very clear. Like they'd be like, oh, okay, so I don't know how to solve this, but there's that kind of like chiseled cube, which I'm pretty sure I've seen something similar in the quarry. So I go back to the quarry and try to solve the quarry puzzles, and then I might understand how to do this thing.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing would be really, really cool kind of guidance that the game does lack. So,
but man, when you get your head around some of the trickier puzzles in that game, though, you feel awesome.
Oh,
yeah.
There was a couple of puzzles though where like you really do have to be kind of galaxy brain to solve them. I'm pretty sure I still have my notepad somewhere where I actually have all my witness puzzles kind of sketched down. But there were some of them where I'm like, I cannot work this shit out, and I just had to kind of hop onto Google and like get a hint that, you know, like this is how you kind of solve this thing, or have somebody actually explain to me how the fuck the puzzle worked, because I was not getting it. But like 90% of it I was able to get through without doing that. But it kind of it does suck when you get into those situations. You're so stupid.
It's funny too. Like you don't have to brute force your way through certain areas. Like to clearing your head and taking a break and going and doing something else and coming back to it, like almost always really helps in that game. So it's super clever in that speed. I mean, Jonathan Blow, who was the designer of it, man, I've got such mad respect for the ingenuity of putting that thing together, because it's just a work of genius. It's something else. So, yeah.
It's been long enough since I played it now that it would actually be a puzzle.
Yeah.
I've still got it installed on my PS4, and I have intended to go back and play it. Maybe I will, but I think I would need to restart because I've lost all the prerequisite knowledge.
I've got 2 copies of it, both on PC, because I bought it on Steam and then I got it for free on the Epic Game Store 1 week. So
I flat out refuse to Google for like hints or anything like that, to my detriment. But to my detriment, like where I feel like I probably would, if I just got like a little bit of a hint towards the solution, I'd probably enjoy the game more because I wouldn't feel frustrated. But I just can't bring myself to do it, and so I keep myself in a state of frustration.
Yeah.
Like to my own demise.
It's a slippery slope. It's almost like when you're playing Minecraft in a survival world and you think to yourself, I've got this really cool build I want to do. I'll just switch to creative just for 1 sec just to get one resource, and then I'll switch back. It's never once. Like as soon as you break the seal, you've done it.
But,
so, yeah.
Like communities around puzzle games like that now, especially those ones that are very, very, it's not linear, but they have very clear solutions. They've kind of constructed a method of like communicating to players like in a way that provides hints that's not clear, so you still feel smart for solving it. It's just that you need that little nudge to kind of like make something click in your head. Like you understand everything else already. So I'm when I had looked up solutions for puzzles, it was never just like do this. Here's a drawing. It was always like avoid this shape with this when you're drawing around it and that sort of thing. Like they find ways to communicate to it. Barbara Is You, the community around that, does much the same thing, where they're basically like the part of the this solution you want to focus on is actually this keyword. And then when you go and look at that solution, when you look at that hint, and you're like, the fuck does that mean? How does that keyword have anything to do with this? But then it gets you thinking about like focusing around that thing instead. It's like you just haven't looked at enough, essentially. So that kind of communication's really, really helpful. And games that do that sort of thing more, I think a lot of puzzle games end up being way too hard, and like running any sort of D&D puzzle and expecting the players to find the one solution you have in mind never pans out. It never pans out.
Yeah, they always find ways to surprise you. Yeah.
Yep.
So aside from like just dedicated puzzle games, do you guys have any like standout individual puzzles that exist in other games that you would call out as notable ones that have stuck with you?
I had a really hard time thinking of individual puzzles, to be honest.
For me, I can very easily kind of point to the physics puzzle in Half-Life 2. Mm-hmm. Back when they came out, now I'm really tired of that shit.
Yeah.
Like physics puzzle games are just so overdone, but back then it was really interesting and new because nobody had done something like that before. Because like physics systems didn't really exist back when Half-Life 2 first came out. And so at the time it was really cool to be like I remember this one puzzle when you're going through the sewers and you have like this ramp, it's just a plank of wood on like this empty tube, and you have to put a whole bunch of cinder blocks on one end to climb your way up to the other. Really, really simple puzzle. But like before that time, you would have seen the cinder blocks, you would have seen this object, you'd been like, what the fuck do I do here? Because you never had the language of like, pick the cinder block up and put it on the end of that ramp, right? It just wasn't really a thing that you had to do to do anything in games. And so it was interesting in that respect. And then there was a whole bunch of really fun, like more complex physics puzzles later on in the game, with like merry-go-rounds and that sort of thing, where like doing certain things with them would allow you to get access to health packs or ammo or that sort of thing. It always made you feel really smart when you kind of use like real-world knowledge to do that stuff in the game. So yeah, I can point to those. Yeah.
I probably have a couple of notable ones that I'd point to in the game The Room 3, specifically. The Room's like a series of kind of environmental puzzles that I actually played them on iPad because they're designed for mobile or PC. And I think there's 4 or 5 of these games now. But they're definitely very sort of heavy theme puzzle games. They're kind of a little bit... even though it's not strictly FMV, it's those sorts of environments that you might remember from games like Myst and Riven and you know, Zork and those sorts of games. But it's a lot more puzzle sort of heavy around like each object in your environment usually has like a particular purpose, like whether it's a key that goes in a particular lock or a rope that can be pulled to do something, or there's a lot of mechanical things involved with like lots of different moving parts, and sometimes it's pushing and prodding and pulling things so you work out what shifts and moves and how to open this object to find the thing inside and that kind of stuff. So you know, it's almost like, Matt, you've been looking into those real world puzzle boxes recently, which actually like are a tactile experience where you're trying to push, prod, and pull things open. It's almost like the game version of like lots of those. So yeah, they're really cool. And there's a couple from The Room 3 that stand out to me. There's one involving a train model, which is awesome, and another one that for the life of me I cannot even describe. I'd have to actually physically show you. It's involving like a turntable model and a whole bunch of sort of moving parts on it. But those stood out to me as like great experiences that I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
The only problem with that sort of stuff I found is that there are some games that have puzzles that, because there's usually one solution and a limited number of options in how to solve it, you absolutely can just eventually brute force your way through to the solution.
Yeah.
So you literally just try everything, and by process of elimination, you get there eventually. So
every single fucking classic adventure game, like Sam and Max, like, okay, well, I have these random objects and I have this random problem. I guess I'm just going to use every fucking object on the problem.
Yeah. I think if you put in some consequences for failure, it can kind of offset that to a certain extent, but making it fair and not unfun, I think, is the danger there. So yeah.
A lot of the time in those games, like, it was clearly like the designers thinking like there was some logic to them that didn't make sense to anybody else. I found that with some of the Ace Attorney games, it was kind of the same. Like, you got to connect this piece of evidence to a fact, and it's like, I don't know how these fucking things connect.
Yeah, and a bit of mood logic involved sometimes. Like, you draw conclusions that would just otherwise be out there, no one would theoretically, realistically get this.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And you go like, okay, well, this is clearly the thing, and then you draw it, and no, that's wrong. And it's like, well, I don't fucking know what the solution is.
Yeah. That's a problem with some of those early LucasArts games as well. Yeah. Because they try and be weird and wacky, and that means that the solution often is something so oddball that people wouldn't come up with it on their own.
Oh, yes. Use the jar of peanut butter on the power socket.
Yeah. Exactly. That makes no sense to me. I mean, why wouldn't you use it on the window pane?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It makes way more sense.
Oh, God. But, yeah, I don't know. All right.
I was going to say, most of the examples I could think of were more of, like, jumping puzzles and stuff like that. Not the traditional puzzle. So,
have you got a favorite jumping puzzle?
There's actually a lot of jumping puzzles from some of the earlier Assassin's Creed games that I like Assassin's Creed 2 and Brotherhood, where you're like just situated in like a cathedral or whatever, and then you just need to get to a certain point, and you need to like figure out how do you do it, like where do you jump to, where do you hang from, blah 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 blah. And yeah, they were jumping puzzles.
Yeah,
it just makes me remember Hitman's a puzzle game.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, absolutely. I mean, games like Uncharted and Tomb Raider as well, like they're definitely very heavy on the puzzle mechanics and jumping puzzles too, to a certain extent. Yeah. So, yeah.
But I definitely want to give a shout in, instead of the opposite of a shout out, to any puzzle that is like just pull these levers or rotate these things in the correct order because they suck.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I would 100% agree.
The worst example I can think of is Skyrim, where every single goddamn like dungeon has the same like 3 slabs that you rotate that have like a picture of a bird, a fish, a whale, or a crab or whatever, and you always just look around the room and you find those symbols like embedded in the wall, and then you go, okay, it's those 3, rotate, 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 done. And because that is procedurally generated, like so there are hundreds of those crappy puzzles that are also solved the same way, and they suck.
Tower of Hanoi puzzles.
Oh,
Fucking
yeah.
garbage.
I hate those things.
Fucking garbage. So Tower of Hanoi puzzles is the ones where you have like a stack of rings and you have to move them from one spoke to another.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's also like the
fucking Tower of Hanoi puzzle.
It's the same thing when you have the puzzle around sort of crossing the river to pick up passengers, and certain passengers can't travel together, and you have to work out which order to ferry them.
In the RE2 remake, there's one with like liquid where there's jars, and you need to transfer the liquid from jar to jar until one jar like it meets a certain line.
Yep.
Yeah,
that's the same sort of thing.
They did it great in Die Hard with a Vengeance, but they shouldn't have it anywhere else. So yeah. All right.
Yeah, that's it. The other one that I really fucking hate is sliding puzzles.
Yeah,
sliding image puzzles. Yeah.
Although, I think there's potential there. There are actually some good sliding puzzles in one of the Assassin's Creed games, actually, that I remember. I can't recall why, but I remember enjoying those. But certainly other ones like in some of the Pokemon games where you're like pushing a boulder around and you need to like push it into certain corners so that you can reach it from another side. And a lot of that ends up being trial and error. And
it's just tedious.
Not terribly satisfying.
I think there's some good ones and there's some bad ones, but ultimately with those specific puzzles, it's a bit of a sliding scale. So, yeah.
I was waiting for it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Glad.
It's going to go there.
I'm glad. All right. Well, anyway, that's puzzle games. So, I think we covered a fair bit of ground tonight, actually. There's some bits there that I wasn't expecting to chat about, to be honest. So, some interesting dynamic between the challenge and the repeatability of some of those tasks, I guess. Yeah. But I do love me a good puzzle game. I think they're still super fun when you get the right one. So
I think I've discovered that I don't play many puzzle games. Like looking through it doesn't seem to be a genre that I go for.
Yeah, probably because it's so blended with every other genre out there. But I actually, after this discussion, I'm almost compelled to fire up Steam and do a search for the puzzle category tags. I'm pretty sure it is a tag, and just sort of see if there's anything that comes up that looks particularly compelling, because I'm sure there's some good stuff out there. But
most of the stuff in there will be like blatantly puzzle games.
Yeah.
Like very much down that end of the scale.
Like Glass Masquerade and things like that.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Yeah. Well, look, if anyone listening to the show actually has got some experience with the puzzle game that we haven't spoken about tonight, we would super love to hear about it. So pop us through some suggestions of things we can check out and try via all the usual avenues. So mail at partyloaded.com, send us messages on Twitter at partyloadedshow, or hit up our Facebook page, just search for Party Loaded. More games to look at is something we would always welcome. So that's a super good one to give us some feedback on. But yeah. Otherwise, you can find all of our stuff as per usual via the main hub at channelendgaming.com. So links to our YouTube and our Twitch and everything else. Gentlemen, we've got like more games happening as of now than probably we have in this quiet part of the year so far. So what have we got to look forward to besides Doom and Animal Crossing? I'm sure there's something I'm forgetting about in the next week. So
when's FF7 remake out?
That's April.
April, right?
Yeah.
There was one thing. There was one thing before those games. What was it?
Matt
eludes me.
Matt and I have got the new Destiny season kicking off potentially.
There was something else. March game release.
Yeah. I'm sure
there'll be a schedule.
I'm sure there's something we're forgetting because
I don't give a shit.
There's not
right
actually.
I'm
Persona 5 Royale, maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Is that out? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, we'll look into it. It's a puzzle.
It's a puzzle.
It's a puzzle, yeah.
There's a single solution.
You are actually correct about that. You are correct about that. All right. Well, anyway, that's a great show. So thank you, everybody, for listening. I hope you've enjoyed the topics tonight. We'll, of course, be back again 7 days' time. That's not a puzzle, but there is a single solution. And that's to come back and listen to the show again next week. So until then, thanks for listening. Thanks, Christian. Thanks, Matt.
All right. Thank you, Luke.
We'll see you then.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Till next week. Bye.
Later, gang.
The Party Loaded podcast is a Channel Endgame production. For this and more great gaming content, bookmark channelendgame.com.